Where is the other apostate? Clip her wings.
Gonna do one of those disclaimer things here because, well, we're talking about violence. It's violence in pop culture, but still violence nonetheless. So if you don't like violent action sequences or fake blood and guts in games or movies, just click off the video and tune back in next week. We'll talk about some less abrasive things. Violence, brutality, gore, savagery, whatever words you want to use to describe it, it has been a staple in movies and games for ages. Going back as far as 1903 to the Great Train Robbery, where audiences were appalled at all the men getting shot and actually feared for their lives when they themselves got shot at the end of the movie. So was there public outcry to ban these horrible films from existence? Of course, yes there was. But did that stop directors from continuing to make them or the audiences from showing up to see them? Absolutely not. Violence sells. It causes waves of controversy no matter what the media is, but people love to see the morbid reality that is given in these movies. Unnecessary violence is often taboo and cartoonish these days, sort of Tarantino-esque with dramatic deaths and blood everywhere, and often with comedic undertones. But the real violence often isn't even the bloodiest. It's the kind that sparks the most emotion from the viewer and the kind that leaves an impact to the story. For example, the scene in The Killer Inside Me where Casey Affleck beats Jessica Alba to near death over the course of 2 long, drawn-out minutes. The scene is unsettling to watch because it's a reality of things that happen in everyday life, behind closed doors, hidden from the public and taboo to speak about. It's something that people don't want in their face. Video games have always been heavily criticized over their violent aspects. Games from Call of Duty to Grand Theft Auto to more notorious games such as Manhunt or even more recently Active Shooter, which reached national attention and was pulled before even being released to the public because you played as an active shooter in a school. I'm all for allowing forms of entertainment to pretty much do whatever they need to convey the plot or the scenario that they have in their mind, but senseless shooting in a school at this time in society where mass shootings, gun control debates, and media frenzies occur nearly every day in the United States is crossing the line even to me. More recently, however, a few games have been subject to this criticism on their use of violence in their teaser trailers. Detroit Become Human and The Last of Us Part 2, both Sony exclusive games from developers Quantic Dream and Naughty Dog respectively. Detroit Become Human had a trailer depicting a choose your path scenario of domestic abuse, where if you didn't take the right steps to interfere with an angry father, he would end up killing his daughter in a fit of rage. It wouldn't show the beating, but it shows him walking up the stairs with a belt. You hear her scream and he places her lifeless body in a bed and says it's all over now, daddy's not angry anymore. Many people have cried outrage over this game trailer for depicting child abuse, but it seems to me there's a severe disconnect in the criticizers and the platform that they're upset with. Esther Ranson, an English journalist and television host, has stated, "Who would play such a game for fun? People who are impervious to the suffering of children." She also goes on to say, "How could anyone contemplate creating a video game with that as a fun element in it?" I understand her stance on the topic of child abuse, but I disagree with her assessment with its use in media. In no way, shape, or form is the scene of child abuse portrayed as fun, enjoyable, or pleasant to experience. The game is showing the morbid truth of real-life instances in order to tell the story that they are trying to tell. Ranson goes on to say, "Criminals who attack children often create similar fantasies in their imaginations before they act them out. Such a criminal would regard this game as validation." Where I would respond again to say there's a massive disconnect in her assessment of this trailer and what is actually occurring. You don't play as the father, you don't support the father's actions, and you're vehemently trying to stop this specific act from occurring to the daughter. No scumbag who actually wants to abuse children that happens to play this game would ever feel validated in their thoughts at playing this scene. I think just the fact that it's a video game and people of her generation don't view video games anything more than childish games, not even considering them works of art on the level of movies these days, just allows them to make blanket statements to people their age, and they all accept it as canon. They won't play this game to form an opinion, they just take their stance firmly and scream from the bleachers. Moving on to Naughty Dog's The Last of Us, the more interesting topic to me. The first game of the title, releasing in 2013, tells the story of a man named Joel who wakes up one evening to the world going to hell. A cordyceps parasitic fungus has infected people in mass, turning them into mindless, aggressive, rabid people similar to the infected in the movie 28 Days Later. The prologue has Joel's 12-year-old daughter Sarah wake up to an empty house and look for her dad. Joel grabs her after he's forced to kill an infected neighbor, and they make their way through Austin on the search for safety. They end up on foot being shot at by a National Guard soldier, killing Sarah. The game flashes 20 years forward from there, depicting Joel and a woman named Tess firmly in the shit of a world, discussing robbing and killing people like they're deciding on what's for breakfast. The game goes on to introduce Ellie, the game's second protagonist. Ellie is a 14-year-old girl born into this post-epidemic world. She grew up in the savagery and the violence that occurs daily. By the time she meets Joel, she's already killed infected herself and has seen close friends die to them. However, she's immune to the cordyceps fungus, so Joel embarks on a long journey to bring her to a group called the Fireflies to hopefully create a cure for mankind. The game was praised highly by critics, but of course, the violence was a source of criticism since the trailer's release. Such a young girl being not only exposed to the brutality, but she ends up killing people herself. There's a bonding moment in the game where Joel gives Ellie a rifle and says to make every shot count, or when he gives her a pistol to carry instead of having just her knife to stab people with. I think the raw, unfiltered violence is what makes this game though. There isn't routine encounters in this game. Every infected you come across can kill you. Make a small noise trying to sneak around that clicker? Well, now your carotid is spaghetti. Try to run past the bloater to get that first aid? Well, hope you like your mandible detached from your face. The human encounters are often more gruesome than the infected. They won't hesitate to shoot women or children for supplies. They'll shove a machete through your stomach and set you on fire. That doesn't mean Joel and Ellie aren't doing their fair share either. Joel goes on a rampage of emotion, beating and torturing people even after they give him what he wants, and Ellie took a machete to David's face like she was trying to street chop an onion. The violence in this game is used to portray extreme contrast. Naughty Dog wants you to appreciate the beautiful moments that occur, laugh and feel happy when Ellie and Joel make jokes, and they want you to fear deeply during every encounter that can leave you dead or maimed. They want this dark world where mankind is decimated to be contrasted by the beauty of nature that is reclaiming cities and society. They want these characters to make sacrifices. A 14-year-old girl killing a man in such a flagrant act of brutality is a statement to the timeline of the game. That is what this world is. Joel still protects her and stops her from chopping up David more than she did, but it doesn't take back what happened. Ellie did it to survive. Her ending up in that situation was her attempt to save Joel in the first place. She brought herself to David's sanctuary to lead them away from sick Joel. The Last of Us makes you feel as though the violence is justified to survive, but still makes you feel like trash when it happens. In contrast to other games such as Call of Duty or Grand Theft Auto or Far Cry, where you can kill hundreds of people without batting an eye, and the story continues on like nothing's happened. Joel and Ellie are consumed by the environment they're in and are forced to partake or just lay down and die. This brings us to the trailer of Last of Us Part 2. Brutal scenes are depicted, such as hanging people and disemboweling them, crushing their arms with hammers, decapitation, slitting throats, and shooting faces, among many more scenes of violence that make you almost want to look away. I think this is Naughty Dog doubling down on the world that exists in The Last of Us. Kill or be killed, and the more you kill, the more dehumanized you become. This game takes place 5 years after the events of the first game, and Ellie's now 19 and the main character. She's an adult, fully formed in this savage world, so the things she does she may in fact be numb to at this point. She's seen death in every way possible, dealing a lot of the death from her own two hands. I couldn't imagine what that would do to a child who started murdering as young as a teenager, and not a one-time murder, a consistent fight for survival that never stops. Also the fact that she's never known a normal world. She's never seen a functional society. Joel's seen what the world was like before. So murder and violence probably affects him a little different than it does Ellie. Ellie was born into it. She was born after the massacre. She was born after the epidemic. So her cognitive function of thinking about the world is going to be different than Joel or you or me, because we've never experienced that. The world still today, at least as of recording this video, is a functional society. And I think that makes the violence all the more necessary, and it makes you more involved in the emotion that's happening to the characters in this world. Not just Ellie. We'll have to see together when the game releases whether or not the violence is amped up from the first game, and whether or not it feels required to tell the story that Naughty Dog is trying to tell. Let me know what you think about the violence in The Last of Us, or the violence in video games and movies in general. Do you think violence needs to be toned down, or do you think that violence is justified in the portrayal of an art? Also, if violence is something you appreciate in games, what's one of your most favorite violent scenes from video games? I'd love to know your thoughts on this, so please leave a comment below. Also, check out my channel. I make gaming focused videos weekly with a few extras thrown in here and there, so subscribe if you can get down with that. Also, like and share if you thought Ellen Page was Ellie for the longest time. Alright, see ya.
Everybody let me hear you say, oh yeah, hold your hands in the air and wait for my just don't care. And if you like fishy grits and all that pimp shit, everybody let me hear you say, oh yeah.